Hello everyone, welcome back to ParsecGames, and this video is going to be episode 3 of our Five Nights at Freddy's 2 tutorial. And last time what we did was we did the office. I'm just going to check what we did actually. I think we did the office, including the buttons and the desk inside, and you could turn on the lights in the vents using the buttons, and also use space for the flashlight down the corridor. And now what we're going to do is this episode is going to be all about the camera system. So obviously we're missing the two buttons down here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import the image for the button down here, which opens the camera. So I'm going to go down here into Upload Sprite. And this should be, if you have the textures downloaded. If you don't, check the link in the description. If you do have them downloaded, they're going to be in the folder, the Office Nights and Menu. And in there, it's going to be in the Office Utilities folder. And it's going to be number 95.png. That's what it looks like. Okay, and now we're going to have to move it to the correct location. So obviously when the flag is clicked, it's going to have to hide itself because it's not supposed to show in the main menu. It should only show when you're actually in the game. And let me just check what receive we're going to want to get for this. Night.start, I guess, yeah. And then let's just execute this and have it run forever so that we can actually get the correct position for this thing. So we need to fit two of these next to each other. So I think we need to make it a little bit smaller, a little bit more to the right. Yeah, that looks about right. These are the coordinates I'm going to be using. Now, I don't think we have a variable yet, which keeps track of whether the camera is up or not. So we're going to make that. We're going to call it camera up. And camera up is going to be set to 0 when the night starts, because obviously you're supposed to start in the office with the camera down. And now what we're going to do is we're going to rename the sprite, just because I like to do that. We're going to call it camera up or whatever. Camera hover maybe. Whenever we're in the office, we're going to check whether the player is currently touching this sprite right here. So we're going to use an if statement, if touching mouse pointer. So if it's touching the mouse pointer and the camera up is 0, then that means we need to bring up the camera. So we're going to set camera up to animation up. This is going to come in handy later. Well, actually what we can do is we can just check if it's touching the mouse pointer and then check whether camera up equals 0. In that case, it should set camera up to animation up. If camera up equals 1, that means the camera is already up. Then we want to have the animation where it goes down, so we're going to set it to animation down. Otherwise, it shouldn't do anything, because if it's neither 0 or 1, that means it's either animation up or animation down at that moment. And that means that the player shouldn't be able to hover over it. Yeah, that should already work, and we're going to see that now it's stuck on animation up because there's nothing changing that. So now we're going to actually add the camera animation, so we'll make a new sprite and import some costumes for that. I'll just have to check where the camera animation is. Yeah, so it's in monitor and cameras and then monitor. And I'm just going to bring them into the right order, which they almost are. Okay, so for some reason the file names are actually not in the correct order. So the correct ordering is 114, 97, 116, 99, 103, 104, 105, 106, 110, 112, and 113. I don't know why, but this is the correct order. I just checked the animation by clicking through it, and it looks correct. Yep. And now what we're going to do is this obviously also has to hide when the flag is clicked, because it shouldn't be there in the beginning. And now we're going to switch to the final costume, make it show again, and just try to, once again, get the correct size and position for this. So I think size 100 is actually pretty good, and position 00 is actually pretty good. So we can just keep that. And now what we're going to do is we're gonna get a new receiver, which is camera animation up. And if we receive that, we're going to want to go to the first costume of our animation and then repeat 10 times. Switch to next costume. And when that's done, when the animation is done, we're going to set camera up to 1, because in that case, the camera is up now. And when we receive camera animation down, it's going to be a new receiver. We're going to just start on the last sprite, last costume, and switch to the, and within the loop, always switch to the costume before the current one, meaning it goes backwards. And when that's done, we're going to set camera up to 0. Yep. And now obviously we need to make the hover thing actually send out the camera animation broadcasts. Okay, so I'm manually gonna set camera up to 0 again. And now we should be able to hover over this hover thing, and then the camera should go up. Yep, very good. And now you might have already noticed that if you're very quick, which if you're on a harder night, you might actually need to be very quick. Actually, it might not register your mouse going over the thing, over the hover sprite, whatever you want to call it. So we're also going to check whether the mouse X and mouse Y coordinates are larger than a certain value, which is mouse X has to be larger than 0, and mouse Y has to be smaller than some certain value, which I'm going to say in a moment, which is minus 140 maybe. We'll just have to try this out. And in that case, it should also act as if we hovered over it. So now this feels a lot better now. You can just quickly move your mouse into the corner and it brings up the camera. The camera animation actually stays on the screen even after it's done. So what we need to do is we need to make it hide once it's over and show when it begins. Yep. And now, as you can see, we bring up the camera and we can still move the office. We need to prevent that. So let's see. In here, in the office sprite, this seems to be the script which moves around the office. So we need to check whether the camera up is not currently 1, because we want to be able to move the office during animations and if the camera is down. So the only case where we don't want to have it moving is if the camera's up. So we're going to check that, put it in here. Okay, and now the office can't move anymore. The fan has also stopped working and there's no office tick being broadcast, meaning the whole office is frozen, which is great. So all we had to do was just wrap this if not camera up equals 1 around the whole thing. And I actually just realized using this forever loop in the camera hover is actually pretty stupid, because this is actually pretty bad for performance. Instead, we're going to be using the office tick, which we're receiving from down there. But obviously now the office is no longer sending out ticks when we're in the camera, so we can never bring down the camera anymore. So we're going to need to introduce something new, which is going to be the camera tick, which I'll do in a moment. But first I'm going to rename this camera animation to camera animation. And now we need to actually add all the camera feeds. So we make a new sprite and look for those. And we're just going to basically import all of these images. Maybe we're going to start with the main hall, which already has 6 images, as you can see, because there's so many different states this can be in. And as you can see, this looks kind of terrible because it's pretty pixelated. And what we're going to do now is we're going to, instead of importing these normally, we're going to import them using HD upload. If you don't have Scratch add-ons yet, I'm definitely at some point still going to make a video about it. I still haven't done that yet. Just install Scratch add-ons. It's a free plugin for Firefox and Google Chrome and so on. And just enable HD uploading. And that will allow you to actually upload pictures in their original quality as vector graphics, which will look a lot better. Yeah, so as you can see, they look a lot better. And now we're just going to give these names. And the reason why there's so many sprites, I guess, is because you can actually light up every camera. So there's always a sprite for the light being on or off, which is going to be a lot of costumes. So this is going to be Chica. So we're going to call this sprite 1_Chica, because this means that the flashlight is currently on. That's what we mean by 1. And this is Chica in the office, but the flashlight is 0. So 0_Chica. And this is going to be 1_Freddy. Yeah, I guess we can call this Freddy, and the other one is Toy Freddy. And this is going to be 1 Bonnie. This is just going to be 1. And this is 0. And we'll be using all these later. And now the problem is that the way I actually want to do this is I don't want to have a lot of sprites for all the different cameras. That's going to be a lot of work. Instead, I'm actually going to be using one sprite for all cameras this time. I don't know if I did that in the FNAF 1 tutorial. That's years ago at this point. The way I would do it today is that I would actually make it all one sprite. So I'm going to be calling this main hall _. And I'm just going to paste this in front of every one of these costume names we've decided on so far. Okay. So what we're going to do now is that when we send out camera animation up, that means that we're currently lifting up the camera. So this camera feed sprite, which I'm actually going to call camera feed, is going to listen for camera up and wait until camera up equals 1, meaning the transition is over now. And as soon as that happens, it's going to show itself, go to the middle of the screen, and for now set the size to 80 maybe 85, so that it actually covers the whole screen. And as you can see now, there's a problem here where the edges aren't completely filled. The way we're going to fix this is, it's a little bit of a trick in Scratch. As you can see, the sprites are actually the costumes are actually very large. And for some reason, Scratch doesn't allow you to resize these as you would like. So they sort of limit it. So what you need to do is make a new costume, which we're just going to call Resizer. And we're not going to put anything in this costume. It's just going to be to do this little Scratch hack that I somehow figured out, which is that you can switch to a different costume, set the size to whatever you want, and then switch back to the costume you actually want. And that's going to allow you to just choose the size, any size you want. So as you can see, I can make it much bigger now than I could before if I set the size down here. See, I could only set it to this large, and here 120 is much larger. And as you can see, this isn't actually working, so we need to put something into this resizer sprite in order for it to allow us to resize stuff. So I'm just going to put in like a large black rectangle, which pretty much fits the entire screen. And now 50% actually fits the screen quite nicely. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And now the cameras actually move around a bit in the game. So this way it covers the whole screen, but we actually want to have it be able to move around a bit. So we're going to set it to maybe around 60 or even 70%. Yeah, that's okay for now. And we're also going to broadcast analog transition because we want to turn on the camera. So now I'm going to turn camera up to 0 and hide this camera feed. So now we're back in the office, and I'm going to bring up the camera, and this should give us a nice transition to the camera feed. Yeah, as you can see, that worked. Now the camera shouldn't always be pointing at Chica in the main hall whenever you open the camera. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to have it repeat until camera up is no longer 1. Just going to send out a camera tick. And we're going to make a new block called switch to cam, and then add an input field, cam code. And that's going to be it for now. And we need to somehow store which cam the player is currently looking at. So we're going to make a new variable called current cam. So now we have this switch to cam block, and we also have this current cam variable. And we're going to start doing something with those very soon. But for now, we're going to just, when we receive night.start, the camera feed is just going to hide. And it's going to set the current cam to 0. This is obviously not a real camera code from the game, but we're going to change that later. But when we bring up the camera, we're going to make it switch to cam, current cam. And this analog transition broadcast over here is going to go into switch to cam. For that, we're going to check whether the cam code is not equal to the current cam. Meaning we're checking whether whenever we call this custom block, we can put in whatever cam code we want, and we want to check whether we're actually changing the current cam, because only then we're going to broadcast an analog transition. Otherwise, we're staying on the same cam, so we don't want to broadcast that. This will all make sense in a moment. Just bear with me now. What we also need, obviously, now is this little area down here to the right of the camera, bottom right of the camera, which lets you select the camera you want to look at. So we're going to make a new sprite and import that in camera utilities inside monitor cameras. There's a map sprite, costume sprite. I keep saying sprite, and in Scratch they're called costumes, but you know, they're usually called sprite. And as you can see, this is quite big. So we're just gonna try to get it to the correct size that we like it to have. Okay, so this seems like an appropriate location for this. So the size is going to be set to 45, and the coordinates are going to be 138 and minus 105. But now, as you can see, this is actually missing all the buttons, which is pretty strange. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually have to import these as well as little from labels. There's the labels down here. And I'm just quickly going to have to check where each camera is, because I don't know this by heart. So just give me a second to look this up. So, okay, so now I just looked up where these actually belong on the map. And we're just going to call these by what they actually are, which is cam 01. And it's going to be 0 underscore cam 01, because these are deselected. If they're selected, they actually turn green. So we're going to have to do that for each of these. So this is 0 cam 02. And I'll just keep doing this for all of these, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so now I have all 12 of these camera sprites, costumes ready to go. And now we're going to need those where they're actually selected. And as it turns out, these are actually not available as sprites. We actually need to get the color from somewhere else, which is in camera utilities. Gonna pick this and just pick out the color from here. And now for each and every one of these costumes that we've imported so far, we're going to make a duplicate and call each of them 1 underscore and then the respective camera. So this is a pair of 0 underscores camera 01, and this is 1 underscore camera 01. And obviously now we're going to have to replace all the gray parts with green. And same goes for all the other ones. So I'll see you again in a moment when this is done. And I'm just going to do a quick check that all of these have the correct names that they're supposed to have. That looks good. Okay, so now we have all of these. What are we going to do with these now? So the thing is, I don't know if I did a lot of this in the FNAF 1 tutorial, but I'm going to be using clones for this. So we're just going to quickly do something, which is we're going to figure out for each of these clones where it needs to go in here to fit in the right spot on the map. So the very first thing we're going to do is going to get this when space key is pressed, or whatever key, but I'm going to use space. Delete clone. This is just to get rid of all the clones we're going to be making now, trying to figure out where these need to go. So I'm going to pull up a picture of where these have to go correctly. And then I'm going to figure out for each of these clones where it needs to go within the Scratch coordinate system and what size it has to have in order to be in the right place. So I'm going to make a new clone and gonna make, when I start as a clone, forever do this for now and switch to cam 0 underscore cam 01. And this is gonna stay on map, this thing. So we're gonna make one clone now, which is gonna be this costume right here, and the map is gonna stay the same. Okay, now we have the clone, and now we can push around the clone however we want to, and just figure out where this specific clone, the camera 01 clone, has to go. Yeah, and for some reason this looks to me to be kind of translucent, but it's not actually, it's just that it has to go to the front layer. Yeah, now it's clearly visible. And this is going to be our location for cam 1. So I'm just going to keep this somewhere over here, tucked over here. This is going to be for camera 1. This is going to be the position. Now we're going to figure out the position for cam 2. And now we have all these little chunks of blocks where we want to have these go to. I'm just going to press space to delete the clones because we don't need them anymore for the moment now. And now when I start as a clone, each clone needs to know what camera he's supposed to be. So we're going to make a new variable, and this has to be a for this sprite only variable. This is very important. And this is going to be my cam ID. And when the game starts, we need to initialize or spawn all these little camera icons. So when night starts, we're going to set my cam ID to 1 and then repeat 12 times create clone of myself and increase my cam ID by 1. So now we're going to have 12 clones, each with my cam ID 1, 2, 3, and so on. So each one has a different cam ID. And when I start as a clone, they're going to check which cam ID they have and change their costume depending on which it is. So switch to costume, join 0_cam, and then the ID. So my cam ID. And I just noticed there's a little bit of a problem here because Scratch, when it counts up numbers, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, whatever. And these cameras so far go 0, 1, 0, 2, and so on. So we're actually going to have to, we're actually going to have to change all of this again to have them be 1 digit each when they're only 1 digit. So no leading zeros here. Okay, so it has to be just the number following cam and no leading zeros. And obviously for 10, 11, 12, we don't have to change this because it's actually 2 digits. So this should actually make them switch to the costume we want to have them at. And I think I was a bit quick with deleting the when space is pressed, delete this clone because we might still need this. So we're going to move this away, put this up here, and just execute this now to see what happens. As you can see, we now have all these 12 cameras over here, but they're not at their correct locations. But we have all the locations they're supposed to be at saved in these little chunks here. Now we could just make a big if-else chain. That's going to be ugly, and I'm actually going to try to make the code a little bit prettier this time, prettier than FNAF 1. I think I started that tutorial in 2017 or sometime. I was a bit younger then. I made pretty ugly code at that point, and then I just had to keep going with what I had. And this time I'm actually going to try to make it a little bit prettier and actually readable. So we're going to make a new block called cam go to location, and then input is going to be ID. And when we're going to define cam go to location using that big if else chain I was talking about, but this is going to be hidden within this defined block instead of having it all down here, which would probably turn pretty ugly. So we're going to check if the ID is 1, and in that case go to the location which we've decided on for camera 1. We're going to check if the ID is 2. In that case, go to the location we've decided on for camera 2, and so on. So just keep going like this, and always pick out the right coordinate for that ID. And we can get rid of these costumes blocks down here. Okay, and this part you can just remain empty because there's never going to be a camera with a different ID higher than 12. And now we're going to make it so that when I receive start as clone, it's going to execute cam go to location my cam ID, and that should make each clone go to the correct location that we figured out for that clone. So I'm going to press space to delete all the clones. There we go. Now we're going to spawn all of them again. And as you can see, they're actually right in the correct locations, which is great. We're going to also add in a little check just to be able to differentiate between the map, which we have in the background, and the clones. We're just going to make a new variable, which is also for the sprite only, which is going to be called myType. I've been using this stuff a lot on Zombie Zone, which is coming out soon or has already come out. And what this basically does is it just allows us to differentiate between clones and the actual real object, meaning the map in this case. So we're going to set the type to main right at the very beginning of the game when the flag is clicked, when there can't be any clones. And as soon as a clone spawns, it sets myType to clone, or yeah, in this case clone, so that we know that this is a clone and not the main thing. So that when we receive, let's say for example, camera tick, then we can differentiate whether this is concerning the clone or the main sprite. So we're gonna want to make it so that the camera which is selected is going to turn green, we're going to check whether the myType variable is cloned, so that this only concerns clones and not the main sprite. And we're going to check whether the selected camera equals myID, my cam ID, meaning whether this specific camera is currently selected or not. So if current cam equals my cam ID, in that case, it's going to switch to costume 1_cam, which is the green sprite, the green costume. And otherwise, it's going to switch to 0_cam. And now we're just going to see that we get some camera ticks going. So let's do this. Now there's camera ticks going. And now we're just going to set current cam to 1 to see what happens. And as you can see, this is not working yet because these clones actually don't have myType clone, because I introduced myType after we did the clones. So I'm just going to delete all the clones again and just have them spawn again. And as you can see, 1 is now registered as being the selected one. If I set current cam to 2, the green thing is going to switch over to 2 and so on. And now what we need to do, we also need to enable the cameras, the buttons here to actually be clicked. So we're going to add in an if mouse pointer is touched and the mouse is pressed down. Then we're going to set current cam to my cam ID and broadcast update camera. And when the camera feed receives update camera, all it's going to do is just going to execute the switch to cam block with the current cam, which has been updated in most cases. So now if we click on one of these, it's going to update the camera. But as you can see, there's a little bit of a problem down here. This actually doesn't make a lot of sense because we're setting the cam code within this block to current cam. So this can never be the case. So we'll just always do an analog transition for now. And as you can see, you can click and hold these, which is not good. So we're going to move this part in here so that this can only be done if it's currently not selected, so that it can only fire once. And there's one little problem, which I didn't consider, which is really stupid, which is that actually the camera hover thing has to reappear when the camera is up. And right now there's no space for that. So we need to move all this stuff up a little bit. But this is going to be where our nice code is going to save us, because this is actually not going to be as bad as it sounds. We're just going to have to figure out how far we're going to have to push it up, and then I'll show you how we can do this very easily. So let's have a look at the camera up, camera hover thing. And we're going to basically just duplicate this, do it for camera tick, and just remove the camera if camera up equals 0, because that can't be if we're receiving a camera tick. And here we can remove the if camera up equals 1, because that also can't happen if the camera is currently down. And we're going to have to make it go to the front layer. Okay, and now what we need to do is that we actually need to make the camera feed hide again when the camera is supposed to go down. So when I receive camera down, the camera feed is just going to hide. Let's try that. Okay, so that works. And obviously when the camera comes up, it needs to show. That looks very good. Except the camera animation finishes just a little bit too early. So we're just going to add in a little bit of a break here before it hides, so that there's no problem with the camera feed appearing a little bit too late. Yeah. And as you can see, we need to move up the map a little bit. And this is getting really annoying. Me moving the mouse down here and the camera thing keeps thinking I'm moving it down or up. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to add in a check and mouse Y is greater than -180, because that would mean that we're on below the border. In that case, I don't want to actually trigger this. I only want to trigger it if we're actually in the actual game scene. And we need to do the same down here, obviously, when the camera is up. So move that in here. And now it shouldn't trigger anymore when I'm moving around my mouse down here. And now, as you can see, we need to move up the map a little bit. And we're going to do that pretty easily, because as I said, this actually shouldn't be too much of a problem. So first we're going to set the Y for the entire map without the camera buttons. So let's move it to maybe 85, even further up, maybe minus 80, minus 75 maybe. Yeah, so as you can see, we've moved it up by 30 in the y direction. And now what we can just do, instead of going into each of these and adding 30 to it, we can just go to the very end and change y by 30. And that's going to make it so that all of these automatically pop up slightly upwards. But this is only going to be triggered when the clones are created. So I'm going to press space again to delete all the clones and respawn them. And this obviously has to be minus 75 now. Let's try that. Okay, now the cameras are all in the positions where they're supposed to be. We can click them. Actually, maybe I'd like it to be slightly higher even, because there's not a lot of space for the mouse down here on the hover button. So maybe around minus 70 actually. And then obviously we just need to move up by 35 instead of 30. Let's have them all spawn again. Okay. And obviously the camera menu has to hide when we're no longer in the camera feed. The map menu has to hide. So when I receive camera animation down, it's just going to hide, and this is going to apply both to the clones and to the actual map, so that both are going to disappear. And now obviously when we need to make it so that when we receive camera tick, it's going to show. And now we can put the camera up and down, nicely see the camera feed, click around in it, look at wherever we want to look at. And I think this is going to be where we're actually going to end the tutorial for today. Obviously, as you can see, the camera feed isn't actually changing when we click these buttons, but we already have the variable changing to the correct value. So it's going to be very easy to make the camera feed also change. That's going to be what we're going to do in the next episode. But for today, this is going to be it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you could follow along. I hope you're agreeing with the coding style I'm choosing so far, which is making it a little more, still not elegant, but it's a little bit less messy than how it used to be in the FNAF 1 tutorial series. I hope you keep following along with me. I know I'm very slow uploading videos, but I try to do my best doing these every couple months or maybe years, whenever I have a little bit more time. I hope you enjoyed this, as I said. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to be notified about new uploads, and I'll see you in the next video.